Hello, everyone. I'll give people a couple of seconds if they want to join before we get started, but welcome to today's Purple Chair Chat. My name is Evelyn, and my pronouns are she, hers. I'm an education and prevention specialist at Jana's campaign, and this Purple Chair Chat will be focusing on gender-based violence within the military. Purple Chair Chats are live conversations instilling the knowledge, skills, and values necessary to prevent gender and relationship violence, and we use these discussions to raise awareness, engage bystanders, and promote healthy and respectful relationships, and encourage the development of new social norms. Before we get going, I do want to mention that I'll be discussing some difficult topics regarding gender and relationship violence that could potentially be triggering for some, so please do whatever you need to take care of yourself. And if you're in need of resources or services but do not know who your local advocates are, please feel free to reach out to us and we will do our best to put you in contact with the right people. So starting off, why is gender-based violence in the military so important to talk about? Well, number one, there are lots of lasting health impacts that survivors experience, which I'll talk more about within this chat, but also the lack of distinction between employment and personal life in the military further complicates the impacts of gender-based violence and creates barriers to people reporting. A 2020 Government Accountability Office report found that women service members are 28 times more likely to separate from military service than their male peers, forfeiting career advancement, leadership opportunities, and full retirement benefits. And many of these women were citing sexual assault as a key factor in their separation. So what are the risk factors for women specifically being targeted? Well, we know that victims of domestic violence in the military are predominantly female, and they're actually typically a civilian spouse of active duty personnel. Victims normally have children, and more than half have been married for only 2 years or less. Abused women in military communities are often fearful of reporting incidences due to the lack of confidentiality, lack of privacy, and overall limited victim services. But moving on to women who are involved in the military themselves, women who are exposed to harassment or violence during their military career are also more likely to experience rape. In fact, a research article discussed findings of a survey that included 558 women who were enrolled in the National VA Healthcare Registry, and 28% of participants reported experiencing rape. The authors of this research article found that certain environmental factors increase the likelihood of rape, factors including prior sexual harassment and unwanted sexual advances on duty. Similarly, younger troops are at a higher risk for being victimized as well. National level data suggests that intimate partner violence primarily begins at a young age. An estimated 71% of females and 58% of males reported having first experienced sexual violence, intimate partner physical violence, or stalking before the age of 25. And on that same note, rates of reported domestic abuse in the military are highest among junior enlisted families, who are typically between the ages of 18 and 24. But getting back to talking about those lasting health complications, women who reported sexual trauma during military service had a higher risk of several health conditions, with some of the most notable being mental health concerns. Female victims have a 7-fold higher risk of developing PTSD and a 2 to 3-fold higher risk of depression and suicidal ideation, compared with women who did not experience sexual trauma. More than a decade after rape or physical assault during military service, women are reported severely decreased overall health-related quality of life, with limitations of physical and emotional health, educational and financial attainment, and severe recurrent problems with work and social activities. So how is this allowed to continue, and why does it keep happening? Well, roughly 100,000 incidences of domestic abuse have been reported to the military since 2015, and that's according to CBS. But the military has not kept comprehensive data on the problem, so it's virtually impossible to assess the full scope and kind of see the big picture. And while the Pentagon has made combating military sexual assault a priority and formed an independent review commission to address this problem, it's still a huge issue. Some survivors told CBS News they felt they were in even more danger after they reported, which we know is a pretty typical occurrence and feeling for many people after they report sexual harassment or sexual assault. Not only that, but 1 in 3 convicted military sex offenders remain in the military, and they're allowed to do so. So we've talked about the reported numbers of sexual assault and gender-based violence instances not being correct and not being accurate. So what are some of the barriers that are causing this lack of reporting and this lack of true accountability? Well, number one, getting back to the lack of distinction between employment and personal life in the military. This really complicates things, and it makes people extremely hesitant to report their experiences. Because of this, there's a fear of experiencing harassment or being targeted even when people aren't at work, especially because military personnel are required to report experiences of interpersonal violence to their chain of command. They have to seek legal and medical remedies through that same system as well. People are not allowed to just use civilian services. And service members experiencing violence may fear and experience retaliation from the perpetrator themselves, who may also be a service member, and even within their same unit or chain of command as well. So they can also experience retaliation from others within the chain of command who have potentially heard about this situation or maybe know both parties who are involved, and that's a very intimidating and potentially scary situation to be in. But while talking about all of this, it's also important to talk about some of the strides that are being taken to address this problem as well. Because the need to understand and address the effects of gender-based violence within the military services is a long-standing issue, the topic took on heightened importance following the April 2020 murder of Vanessa Guillen. And Vanessa Guillen was a 20-year-old U.S. Army soldier who was murdered on April 22nd of 2020 inside a Fort Hood, Texas armory by another enlisted soldier. Vanessa had been harassed for quite some time leading up to her murder, but her supervisor and other officials failed to report the harassment up the chain. On July 10th of 2020, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan D. McCarthy, announced that he would order a full independent review of Guillen's case. So Vanessa's tragic story gained traction across the media and really sparked conversations on this prevalent issue of violence in the military. And on December 8th of 2020, McCarthy announced the results of the investigation, disciplining 14 U.S. commanders and other leaders at Fort Hood as well, citing multiple leadership failures, and the investigation found there was a permissive environment for sexual assault and sexual harassment at Fort Hood. So finally, some accountability and action being taken, just so tragic that it took the murder of an innocent woman for it to happen. And I think on this topic, it's also extremely important to talk about the Women, Peace, and Security Act, or WPS, of 2017. So in 2011, the United States published the first U.S. National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security. And WPS is a seminal piece of legislation for recognizing the role that women play in their communities and their underrepresentation in conflict management, conflict prevention, and post-conflict reconstruction. So with this act, seeing women as leaders from day one will hopefully help to address negative behavior, including lack of respect and viewing women as others, not only in the military, but everywhere else as well. So I'm wrapping up for today. We always appreciate you joining these Purple Chair Chats, and we love being able to have live conversations, instilling the knowledge, skills, and values necessary to prevent gender and relationship violence. Again, if you are in need of resources or services and do not know who your local advocates are, please feel free to reach out, and we'll do our best to put you in contact with the right people. Thank you all again, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next month.